been running the games, I guess. I'm 17 in 7 days, so I'm excited to be able to say that. Yeah. Anyways, I'm going to be a senior next year at Kentwood High School, which is 2,800 students, just to let you guys know where I'm from. Anyways, my story begins as a child, I guess, of course, like all of us. Begins like a child in Phoenix, Arizona is where I grew up. And there in Phoenix, I grew up, I guess you can say, in like a less moderate Christian home. My mom kind of grew up in a Christian family and kind of left her faith for a while. And she actually didn't get rebaptized, kind of rededicated her life till I was like 8 and lived up here. So we went to church occasionally. And I found this church place as a place to really just kind of get attention. There was a guy across the street who was like 6 years older than me, but he always babysat me, and we were actually pretty good friends. And he was really funny. And I decided I wanted to be like him, and I still think I want to be like him because I still look up to him today. But he was really funny at church, I guess, and kind of loud and obnoxious, and I decided that church was a place for me to be like that because I wanted to be like him. And so thus at church, it became a place to make people laugh at me and get attention. I got attention at home. I got two parents that love me, but church was a place where I could get even more attention from people I didn't really know, and I thought that was cool. And so that's me and this guy Patrick, my friend, would toss kind of jokes back and forth to get people to laugh, and we'd hear stories about God and Jesus, and Jesus was the guy God sent to do his work for him, and Jesus was the man who loved me and held the little lamb, and all the children were around him, and he had the blue contacts and brown hair. That was Jesus as the murals on the church wall. And then there was God, and he was the one who sent Jesus to do his work. It kind of almost seemed, he loved us too, but he sent his son to come to us, and that was kind of church and God. So he's that old man up there, just kind of being fed by angels and whatnot. And that was me in Arizona. Church was kind of a joke, I guess. And then I came up to Washington just before I turned 6. I got here actually we moved into my house almost 11 years ago today. And so just before I turned 6, we moved up to Washington. And there, my mom was reunited with one of her friends that she's been best friends with since she was 12. And that's where my mom's walk in faith really picked back up again. So she found out who God was again, and thus I started going to church week after week, and I learned a lot. I learned a lot about who God was, really. Not just that guy up there, but God was a loving Father who came to earth. He came as God in a bod to say, and loved me and died for me. And I learned that. So one night, as I was 6 years old, I decided that I was going to ask God to be my Savior. And I didn't really know what that meant, but I did it, and I knew, nonetheless, God died for my sins, and God loves me, and that's why I did it, because I was like, I want to be in heaven with a guy like that. And after we got moved away from Phoenix, I didn't talk to Patrick much, but my older brother became kind of a role model for me, as he was the 4.0 student in elementary school. He was the president of the school. His little league team, they won the World Series of Little League. An amazing football player. My brother was this role model guy that I wanted to be. I wanted to be just like him. And time went on, and I still lived my picture of God. I still lived with that picture of God that I got when I got here, and I didn't do much on it. I never felt ready to get baptized, and I always, all the time when I'd lay down to go to bed, I was like, God's there for me, but am I going to ever get to heaven? And I swear I asked God into my life probably 10 times between the time I was 6 and the time I was 14, and because I was never sure. And I was always fighting to be sure. But going back from 14, going back to 4th grade, was the first time. My brother was in 6th grade. He's a couple years older than me. When he was president of the school, he got in some trouble. The first time he was 12, and he went and got drunk with a couple of friends, and came home. And my mom and dad found out, obviously, because he was 12 and drunk. And so he ended up no longer being the president of the school, and things started to slip. He still had good friends, and so he played football in 7th grade. was an outstanding player, but by 8th grade, he kind of just gave up on life. He gave up on sports. He gave up on school. And I remember, I'm emotional. Sorry if I start like looking weird. But I remember coming home, and my mom was home early. She never beats me home. My mom never beats me home. She always gets home about an hour and a half after I get there, and she was there before me this day. And I was like, why is my mom home before me? And I went inside, and she's on the phone with my dad, and she is sobbing. My mom is sobbing. And I noticed my brother's backpack on the floor, and I was like, oh my gosh, what happened? You know, I don't know what happened. And so when my mom gets off the phone with my dad after kind of sitting there awkwardly listening in on the conversation, you know, thank God my brother didn't die. But you know, who he was died. You know, he went downhill. He went into 8th grade. Started, you know, this role model older brother. Dropped everything and started smoking pot and drinking all the time. And this is my role model brother, you know. And so suddenly, I don't know what life, you know, it's just like suddenly, you know, here's my brother that I've always looked up to, and now he's nothing. And so I kind of went through life, you know, now my brother's getting a lot of attention as my parents try to help him out. And they tried and tried and tried. And I remember many times crying myself, crying with my mom. And that's just, you know, watching my dad cry. My dad's not a very emotional guy, and that's hard for me to watch. And so I'm sitting here and I'm thinking, man, things have changed. What is my life now? And suddenly I had to find something else. I had to find something that I had to cry out to. And so for the first time, I was crying out to God, but I was in a church that I wasn't going very deep. And my church ultimately had to close its doors because the pastor and his wife got a divorce, and they just weren't no longer the financial support. And so we kind of quit going to church for a little while. And you know, we were happy to find a new church, but we weren't excited to search. And finally, we hit Lake Sawyer, where I go now. And I still remember the first day I walked into the youth portable, and this amazing girl. She's over in Cascade right now. I know she's ministering to a lot of people. And the minute I walked in, she knew I was a new person. Walked over and greeted me like I was somebody that was like her best friend. And I went, "This is where I need to be. This is something's going on here." And God talked to me there. I got baptized back December of 2007, and I know that God's got things for me. And my brother, he kept going downhill. Recently, he's been on stuff to get off of heroin addiction, and I think about this and I'm like, God. Sometimes, you know, for a long time I was like, God, why did this happen? And now I realize, you know, my brother made those choices himself. It was his own doing, and he was somebody I looked up to, and I thank God that my brother didn't do anything stupid to kill himself, and that I also got to watch the worst of the worst. So I know where I don't want to go. And, you know, I kind of grew up fast, but nonetheless, God kept me safe. God kept me out of all these things. You know, like I'm saying, I don't have an amazing turnaround in my life. I wasn't a crack addict, and now I'm a Christian. I was just not one, and then I was one. But as I look back, God was watching me the entire time. God kept a hold over me, and it kept me away from the things my brother got into. And the cool thing now is my mom and I have really been fighting to help my brother, and it's cool now because God uses me, somebody who for a long time was weak. God uses me as a weak man to lead my brother who was a strong guy for a long time. My brother now looks up to me as a person and wants to be like me as a person, and he's using me to reach out to my older brother. God does amazing things. God kept me out of all that trouble, and now he's using me to reach out to people and to connect with people, and he's still keeping me safe. God brought me through all those hard times, not around them, and he did that for a reason. And today, guys, I want you to know that no matter what happens, there's a God who cares for you, and there's a God who will use you no matter what happened in your life. I really want you guys to know that, and and especially, I mean, I've already talked to some kids that have some similar stories. Please come and talk to me. I want to hear your story. But that's my story.